Fuck yes, Christmas! I am gonna get so fucking wasted.
Probably a good idea, what with the bad news and all.
Wait, what bad news?
You know that guy who got you into making commentaries?
Yeah?
Well, now he's an edgy fedora tipper.
Oh my god, Hobbs is a fedora tipper?
Maybe? No, the other guy.
What? TOG is a fucking fedora tipper? Was that why he was gone for so fucking long? Man, that sucks. I really like that guy.
You knew that already, though. For fuck's sake, it's Tom.
Who?
Touche.
How you like me now? 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 How you like me now?
Hello everyone, you are now watching Feminist Logic Fail number 2.
This video made me shit blood.
That's some dank ass meme, bruh! Why did those flashing colors not like my— Oh my fucking god, I'm having an epileptic seizure! This is why autism fucking sucks!
Today we're gonna check our privilege by learning about a horrible issue concerning females in the first world.
Small criticism here, Knight. I don't think that your ignorance and lack of empathy for the experiences of other people is being made clear enough. Could you try a little bit harder next time to convey that?
Well, you're not exactly a slice of humble pie either.
Why, thank you for that meaningful, insightful interjection. You added so much to the discussion of catcalling.
Tom, all this guy was saying that was based on the first thing we hear from this guy's mouth, he sounds like a giant douche that doesn't actually care about the issue at hand. You saying, well, you aren't any Florence Nightingale either, doesn't actually refute what he said. But okay, let's take what you're saying as read. So far, this point is the only thing we the audience has heard from Cammy, so even if he was some sort of raving narcissist, at this point you have nothing to show for it either way.
Forget the women in China or Yemen. No, they have petty issues, okay? They don't know what oppression is.
Okay, just because A is more oppressed than B, that doesn't mean that B is not oppressed. That's an invalid inference. Even though a pragmatic case can be made to suggest that you ought to focus on the most oppressed people first, it's usually not an either-or situation. In this case, you can focus on both, and that's evidently what feminists are doing.
I have not seen one popular feminist on the internet that has donated or created charities for supporting women in third world countries. Anita Sarkeesian? Nope. Lacey Green? Nope. Anyone in MTV or PBS Ideas?
No, no.
It seems that all they care about is women in the first world, and even then, most of the problems women are facing in the first world are non-issues.
Well, that doesn't really matter. Cammy's point was that feminists in general do push for these things. And I mean, hell, just look up feminist charities, it's not that difficult. Just because the 5 people you probably only know about vicariously through Sargon of Akkad or someone don't regularly support charities for women in third world countries, doesn't actually say anything for any other feminist, funnily enough.
And even if we want to go by the assumption that every feminist are just like the feminists that are considered popular, like what you've listed off, you're still making one hell of a baseless assumption here. With the exception of Anita Sarkeesian, where there's enough of an indication to go off of to argue that she's not doing it for the cause but for the money, you're claiming that all the popular feminists don't care about women in the third world when, if you take off your anti-feminist goggles and look at this from an objective viewpoint, there's really nothing to go off of to think that this is the case. Like, you don't know any of these feminists on a personal level, so for all you know, they might actually care about women in the third world and or donate to charities that help women in the third world, but don't talk about it because they might actually be more concerned with bringing awareness to what's going on in their country and how it's directly affecting them personally. Thus, why you would be far less likely to hear conversations about women in the third world if you're living in the first world. Which, funny enough, is something Cammy addresses right after your interjection ends here, so on that level, you can't really say what kind of motivations they actually have, especially when you're not presenting any kind of evidence or examples to support this claim. Instead, you just say that something is true and leave it at that in the hopes that people just accept this at face value without any kind of objection. I hate to be the bearer of bad news, Tom, but that's not how debates work. You still have to argue your case with logic and evidence. If you can't and or not willing to do that, as we're going to see throughout the video, then your argument is invalid from the word go.
If you cared about women in Yemen and China, which you so obviously don't,
Yeah, I'm gonna need a citation for that.
Yeah, you need a citation for that simple observation you made based on someone's behavior. Checkmate, feminists.
you might be aware of the Yemeni Women's Union and the All China Women's Federation. But you don't care about them, do you? You're just using them in order to derail a conversation about women in the first world.
Yeah, because being catcalled is the damn same as not being allowed to drive, forced to cover yourself up, or have to be escorted around by men all the time.
Are you tense? He already addressed this in full like a minute ago. This is called a fallacy of relative privation. Just because catcalling and street harassment aren't as bad as issues women deal with in the third world, doesn't mean the former should be completely ignored in favor of the latter. That is just a completely childish way of dealing with problems.
Also, false dichotomy number 1. Downplaying the non-issues of feminists in the first world doesn't mean he doesn't care about feminism at all. Feminism is necessary for places like Yemen and the Middle East, but it's not necessary in the Western world because women in the first world already have the same legal rights that men do.
Apparently, I have to explain something for the second video in a row. At what point were any legislative arguments even made? Harassment is obviously already illegal, but guess what? Making something illegal doesn't automatically stop it from happening. The documentary in question is arguing that harassment is still a large issue for women regardless. So how about you stop being disingenuous for a second and actually listen?
There's even an argument that women in the first world now actually have more rights than men, such as being exempt from selective services, not having their genitals mutilated while men's genitals are during infancy so that they can't give consent, and court cases involving child custody favoring women in general, regardless if the mother is a good parent or not.
Okay, what does this have to do with the subject of the video or the fact that women in the first world have issues?
Nothing at all.
The reason it appears to you as though feminists only talk about women in the first world is that you, being someone who lives in the first world, are more likely to hear such a conversation. You're ignorant of the fact that feminists do focus on women in the third world because you live in the first world and thus are unlikely to hear such a conversation, which makes what you're saying extremely ironic.
You're going to have to provide some evidence for that claim.
Provide evidence that people are far less likely to hear conversations about women in the third world in the first world. Yeah, Tom, not gonna lie, that's a pretty autistic point you got there.
Because again, I have not seen one popular feminist that has donated, created charities, or made a video, post, or tweet telling other people to donate to a charity helping women in the third world. The amazing atheist is a better feminist than most feminists on the internet.
Not really. I mean, either that, or he's the first feminist I've seen to trivialize rape and get mad at people that point out that 6 months in prison isn't really an adequate sentence for someone that remorselessly raped another person behind a dumpster. But hey, that's none of my business.
The major issue concerning first world women is guys saying things to them on the street.
By the way, there are very high levels of street harassment in Yemen as there are in the first world as well.
Okay, look at this graph. It says that 100% of women in Indianapolis and the California Bay Area have been sexually harassed. That implies that every single woman in those places has been sexually harassed, which I find to be impossible. And how do we know if the sample size of women of those areas are the same number as the women in the other places in this graph? I don't trust this graph, and neither should you.
First of all, and what evidence do you provide for your claim?
Also, considering that these types of studies are always surveys, it's not even necessarily saying that, just that all the people in those samples reported that they were harassed. Not that every woman in those states has actually been harassed. And even if they have, you don't just get to dismiss it based on your own intuition like a fucking spastic. Know why? Well, maybe we should look back at that giant wall of sources you ignored.
If you go to the link in Cammy's description that has the chart, click on the hyperlink where they got the results for the chart from, and scroll down to the survey methods, you'll see that they got the results through telephone and face-to-face interviews with 181,567 adults aged 15 and older conducted during 2011 in 143 countries. For results based on the total globin sample, one can say with 95% confidence that the maximum margin of sampling error is less than 1%. So in other words, it doesn't really affect the results of the survey in any significant way at all. So what did your arbitrary bullshit dismissal of these statistics prove in the end?
Nothing at all.
Goddamn Spurg Lord.
I've been harassed by white men and black men and Latino men and Asian men.
We have right to walk on the street peacefully without being disturbed.
It absolutely speaks to a power dynamic that is askew in this society.
You know what? I totally agree that harassment is a bad thing and it should be stopped.
Call me a harsh critic, but I'm having a hard time accepting this notion that you somehow care. You're clearly not willing to do anything at all to prevent it.
Completely random question, Cammy, but is your house made of glass?
Random question. When are you going to put back the $400 you stole from Emmett's GoFundMe? I can ask irrelevant questions too.
So he's a hypocrite? Well, you're a terrorist. I don't have to elaborate on my baseless-ass accusations because I'm special. Also, less isn't more. That's meaningless horseshit, especially in this context. You either explain yourself or you don't.
If people who have experienced this problem try to educate you about it, you make absolutely no effort whatsoever to empathize with them, but instead you take care to highlight a trivial spelling error before proceeding to trivialize and belittle their experiences as much as possible. Are these the actions of someone who cares? I'm a bit skeptical. They seem a lot more like the actions of someone who doesn't give the slightest fuck.
Hey, moron! Fucking moron!
No, you say that after you explain why he's wrong, fucking moron. Also, taking inspiration from Undoomed.
Hey, moron! Fucking moron!
All of a sudden, I'm not surprised this video turned out the way it did.
He's agreeing with you that harassment is bad. You say he's not sincere about it, yet you have no evidence to back this up.
It's an observation of someone's character displayed through their actions. He doesn't need a citation for anything, you goddamn spurgador.
I can, however, prove that he is sincere. Look at his video calling out Sam Pepper sexually harassing women for his prank videos.
Better idea. How about you look at the dates on your shit?
This was uploaded the exact same day as Cammy's video, meaning in the making of the video, this didn't even exist. And even then it isn't relevant since it isn't the subject of Cammy's commentary.
Regarding the whole typo thing, it's an inevitable mistake that everyone makes from time to time, and therefore I don't give them such a hard time about it. However, you still have to point that out because when you're making a video, you need to proofread your video to make sure tiny errors like that don't happen.
Cammy's issue wasn't that he pointed out the spelling error. His issue was that Nate was ignoring what was being said just to point out the spelling error in a dickish way. Normally, I wouldn't care to bring this up, but the fact that you're completely ignoring what Cammy is saying and missing his point entirely like you've been doing throughout the video so far is getting really infuriating.
However, look at what this video tries to label as harassment.
It's about the idea that women's bodies and very presence in public space is not for us.
Oh my god! He looked at her! He looked at her! Rape! Rape!
If you watch the original video, the primary topics of conversation are catcalling and groping, and not just being looked at. At no point in the video is just looking at someone categorized as a form of harassment. This is just a small piece of footage that's been used to provide visuals to complement what the person is saying. That doesn't necessarily mean that they're categorizing what happens in the footage as a form of harassment.
Little does he know that people are pushing this notion that staring at women for too long is considered harassment, contrary to the legal definition.
Cammy points out that the thing Nate is flipping his shit over is simple B-roll and isn't an accurate representation of the documentary's actual positions. And your rebuttal to this is that people think that staring at someone is harassment. Well, whoop-de-fucking-do. No one cares. Your relevant garbage once again proves
Nothing at all.
They even want to double down, saying that it's okay for a woman to stare at a man for the same period of time because of some unequal power dynamics or some stupid shit. Also, way to take a joke seriously, bruh.
Implying that jokes have no capability of carrying an underlying point or meaning, like Nate's obviously did.
Okay, unlike these people, we're gonna educate ourselves.
Yes, we are superior.
The definition of harassment is
Completely fucking arbitrary. You could have picked up any old dictionary and given us any definition of harassment. Some will be more broad, and some of them will be far more precise. You've just arbitrarily decided that this particular definition of harassment from Google is somehow absolutely true, and all of the other ones are false for no reason. And this is a pointless road to go down because words can basically mean whatever we want them to mean, because we made them up.
Yes, we did make these words to suit our language, but you can't just make up a definition for a word under the sun to suit your narrative.
Yeah, actually you can. Like words, the definition can be made up. That's how we established the meaning of words in the first place. They don't just come out of nowhere. Someone had to make them up.
The definition that Nate used is the basic universal definition of harassment. No matter which dictionary you use, they will say essentially the same thing.
More broad definitions can be twisted more easily, and more specific definitions are more easily used to suit someone's specific argument, especially when we're talking about something somewhat vague like harassment. It really isn't too much to ask to not be specific and zero in on a single definition. Why is this so hard to understand?
How you doing, sweetie?
Now people, pay attention to where she's at. Notice the graffiti, worn out buildings and beat up cars. Notice how everyone looks pretty scruffy.
Yes, we are superior.
She's walking around in a ghetto. It's like, really, what kind of reactions do you expect from people who reside there?
Firstly, you provided no studies demonstrating that catcalling is not as common in the better parts of town, so we can just treat this as a baseless assertion.
True, there is no definitive statistic that says you're more likely to be catcalled in one type of place than another, but through other facts and statistics, we can come to the conclusion that this is the case.
Alright, first of all, where are these statistics you claim exist? Oh yeah. Second, so when Cammy actually brings up studies that are very detailed about how the study was acquired, he's wrong because man wishing. But when you claim there's a study that proves him wrong, but can't be fucked to actually provide said study in the description, you claim to be in the right. You are one very autistic man. I really do not like you right now.
Firstly, as Nate pointed out, we see the woman traveling through a not-so-stellar part of town. Now, who do you think would be living there? Low-income residents who likely have little education and are likely to be criminals. There are studies that prove this.
Which you don't provide. Therefore, I can't look to see if there's any kind of errors in the study or not, so fuck you.
Second, non-white people are more likely to catcall than white people. As we look at the video, most of the catcallers were black.
No they weren't. Maybe I'm blind, but let's actually look back at the clip. The only person that catcalled her was actually a white guy. You're patently lying to your audience right now. So your point basically boils down to, there are black people on the street, so she should expect to be harassed. Yeah, that's kind of fucking racist, Tom.
And going back to my first point, black people are more likely to live in poverty than any other race in the United States. So the next time you're a woman and you decide to walk down a low-income neighborhood, don't be surprised when a couple of people living there act like who they are because of the environment they live in.
First of all, why is this study not in the description? You get my point. Second, this shit is fucking irrelevant because it doesn't change Cammy's argument. So get your racist shit out of my fucking face, you fucking nigger. Third, just because we can expect a certain group of people to do certain things, that doesn't automatically make it okay or justified. So you're yet again being disingenuous in a really pathetic attempt to make yourself look to be in the right when you're not. And lastly, actually let Cammy finish his point, especially since Cammy actually debunks what you just got done saying right after he cut back to his video.
However, I'm feeling quite nice today, so let's just be charitable and assume that both of Nate's assumptions are correct. That this is indeed a working class area, and that's why there's a lot of catcalling. If you're a working class woman who lives there and walks down those streets regularly to go about your daily routine, then Nate, who as we can clearly see is an expert on this subject, has the solution for you.
I guarantee if you were in a better part of town, you would not get reactions like that.
If you're a woman who lives there and you don't like being harassed, then just have more money, you know? Why you gotta be so poor all the time? Why you gotta hang around with all the scruffy people? What's that all about? Just climb the social ladder, silly. Speaking as a middle-class straight white male, it's easy. You'll do fine.
Here's a solution. Take a different route to work.
That was easy.
Yeah. What kind of smug-ass inconsiderate rebuttal was that? Take a different route? What if you live in the ghetto? Even if you do take a different route, you're probably still in the fucking ghetto. Not to mention, what if that person has to take that route to get to work on time? This is such a conditional argument, it's goddamn ridiculous. And now it's becoming apparent that neither Nate nor you are actually taking this topic remotely seriously. Good job.
Really? Calling someone beautiful is harassment?
Do I really have to fucking spell this out for you?
I have to ask you, SJWs.
I'm finding increasingly that social justice warrior, or SJW, is a term that anti-feminists use as a catch-all phrase to put anyone who disagrees with them, or anyone who cares about women, ethnic minorities, and the LGBT community, into a convenient little box. If they start calling you an SJW, you know you're doing something right.
I call them social justice warriors because they're getting triggered over non-existent issues like cultural appropriation, viewpoints that are different than theirs, and microaggressions.
Shut your autistic fucking mouth, you fucking Spurglord. That is so irrelevant to his point, it's not funny. His point is that Nate's dismissing people in the documentary as SJW without listening to what's actually being said about a legitimate issue. And I'm not sure if you're aware of this, but this actually further validates Cammy's point about how Nate is being an inconsiderate asshole who doesn't actually care about the issue being discussed in the documentary. And the fact that you're blindly defending Nate without actually disproving the points Cammy is presenting here is actually making you look kind of shitty as a person.
Let's assume that what you say is true and that we call people SJWs just to discredit them. Let's look at the other side of the fence. What words do SJWs call on people who disagree with them? Shitlord, cis scum, misogynist, transphobe, Islamophobe, mansplaining, rape apologist, racist, you get the point.
Yeah, cool. When did Cammy's video or the documentary use any of those though? Never? Well shit, it's almost like this accusation is completely irrelevant here. Not to mention, sometimes these can actually be valid. Like when someone says, oh, I don't know, hey, you're walking through the black neighborhood and got harassed? What you expect, silly? Just take a different route to work. Yeah, still not over that.
Also, I love how you attempt to dismiss this argument by saying, well, you use labels too! Get fucked, feminists! This in no way invalidates what Cammy said. It's just an easy way out for you since it's obvious you can't think of a real counter-argument to make here. Again, not how debates work.
They call their opponents any inflammatory word under the sun, kind of like the radical right wing. The far left you go, the closer you are to the far right. Go figure.
Where do you draw the line between catcalling and a compliment?
The same place we draw the line between sex and rape, voluntary euthanasia and murder, having dinner and being force-fed.
No, you're not going to seriously argue that. No, you can't be. No sane person would even...
I really shouldn't have to spell this out, but I'll do it for good measure. Consent.
Oh, fuck me.
Is pretty okay? Is you look good okay? Or is every compliment forbidden now?
Nate, it's not about the content of what's being said, it's about consent. Even if you say that they are the most incredibly beautiful, amazingly gorgeous goddess that you've ever seen, and that your brain feels as though it's been hit by a barrage of majestic rays of light, if you say that to a complete stranger on the street, that still qualifies as harassment, because there's no consent, the comment is totally uncalled for, and the person is likely to feel very creeped out and uncomfortable.
Oh no! A guy that I don't know and have no personal connection with made a comment about my appearance. Even though he said I was the most beautiful living thing in the universe, he didn't ask for my permission to say it. Help! Please! I'm being raped by words!
Jesus Christ alive, are you this out of touch? You know what we call it when someone goes up to a random person on the street and calls them the most beautiful thing alive? Fucking creepy! That's a behavioral characteristic of a stalker, so yeah, you do have a cause for fucking concern there. But no, according to Kaiser Spurg V, it's technically a compliment, though it's okay. Fuck yourself.
In all seriousness, this has happened to literally every person in the goddamn world at least once.
Does that make it okay? I'll let you answer that question yourself.
Here's a reality check for you. You cannot limit what other people say in public without violating someone's freedom of speech because of your personal insecurity.
Ma freeze peach! Ma freeze peach! Ma freeze peach!
Tom, this has nothing to do with limiting your freedom of speech. The issue at hand here is that there's a time and a place to say that. Saying shit like that to a total stranger out of nowhere makes you look like a damn creeper. It doesn't matter what your fucking gender is. It doesn't fucking matter whether or not it's supposed to be a compliment. If I went up to a girl and said, you know, I like my women the way I like my memes, then I'm pretty sure anyone would be like, what the fuck? Who are you? Why are you trying to talk to me like that? Are you trying to get inside my pants?
But Redden, harassment isn't real. Pestering random women on the street is what the Founding Fathers envisioned when they penned the First Amendment, right? The citizens have a sacred right to be a bunch of bullshitters and yell fire in a crowded theater. It isn't about protecting unpopular ideas or anything. It's about me trying all the creepy shit I read in a Roosh V book.
Conversely, if you're into BDSM and you like to be insulted in the bedroom, so long as everybody involved consents to it, and so long as you have some kind of a signal to indicate if you no longer enjoy it, then being insulted in this scenario is not harassment. Why? Because the individuals involved have consented to it and agreed that this is what they want to do. Being insulted in a kinky scenario where everybody consents, fine. Insulting a random stranger on the street, not fine. Has the penny dropped yet?
No, but my IQ certainly has from watching this. Thanks.
I know the way I dress is kind of provocative, but it doesn't mean that I should have to deal with it.
Well, miss, here is a fact of life. Everyone has the right to make any kind of comment they want in a public space. I don't need your consent to make a comment like how you don't need my permission to comment on me. I'm not saying I want to insult you without consequence or be a pest. It's one thing if somebody is being a nuisance and won't leave you alone until authorities are involved, but an unexpected comment is not akin to rape. This is such a non-issue that it's really disrespectful and insulting to issues that are actually worth giving a crap about.
Yeah, Tom? Cammy already covered this forever ago in the same video you're commentating on. And unsurprisingly, you just talked over him and repeated yourself because you're so dense. We are human beings. We're capable of focusing on more than one problem at once. There are 7 billion of us after all. Just because a problem is smaller than another problem does not mean it should not be addressed. You know what? Fuck it, I'm gonna hit below the belt here. What if, say, a certain someone needed money to get out of an abusive household, but you needed, I don't know, $300-400 for a problem smaller than his? Yeah, you see where I'm going with this. Not to mention, yeah, you could argue that technically making creepy comments out of nowhere isn't exactly illegal, but at the end of the day, if you're willing to concede that a lot of people are doing a shitty thing that they shouldn't be doing, then really the argument stops there.
You remind me of those YouTube prank channels that go to the ghetto for reactions.
Come on, if you're gonna do a dramatic what the fuck face, do it right.
Why, thank you for that meaningful, insightful interjection. You added so much to the discussion of catcalling.
What? What does this have to do with anything? How was he doing it wrong? Are you really this desperate to have a point?
The point of this is to provide some documentation that gives people a rough idea of what it's like to be harassed on the street, and to serve as an example of what many women experience on a regular basis without a camera crew.
One video of a woman being catcalled on the streets cannot represent the overall experience of women in public.
It is an example of what may very well happen to many women. Holy shit, this is really just becoming sad at this point. Keep sinking the ship, dude. You might just make worst commentary of the year.
Every woman's experience is different. And you know what? Some women are perfectly fine with being catcalled. In fact, some like it.
Yep. Okay. Sink the ship. Tom, this is seriously starting to get legit fucked up. Some women are okay with being catcalled? Holy shit. Who are these women, Tom? Can you pull one of those famous citations out of your fucking fedora? Also, I can't believe I have to say this, but that doesn't make it fucking okay. Some women have a rape fetish. Fun news, this does not make rape okay. This doesn't even make rape against the people who may secretly like it okay, because it's still rape, which is still wrong. Just like harassment is still wrong. How is the harasser supposed to know if the person likes it or not? They don't, and they don't fucking care. Seriously, I can't believe you actually thought this was a good idea.
It's not some bullshit reason like they're internalizing sexism. No, it's because they don't get insecure about unsolicited comments, unlike some fragile, special snowflakes who want to restrict the freedoms of others for their emotional security.
You're a special snowflake for thinking that unsolicited harassment and catcalling is bad or something. Fucking S-Jews.
The fact that you're making really superficial complaints about this particular documentation highlights your ignorance and lack of consideration for the wider problem. And it seems like there's nothing at all that will satisfy anti-feminists. If you point out that street harassment is a big problem, then they'll badger you constantly for evidence. Where's the evidence? Where's the evidence? And then, okay, so you get a camera, you film it, and then you go, oh, well, you must have been asking for it by virtue of the fact that you had a camera crew nearby. Like, what is it that you want?
Well, what I would want, personally, is for you and others like you to look at the bigger picture. You looked at some statistics online and took them at face value rather than taking into account other variables as to how and why these numbers are the way they are.
You did the exact same fucking thing earlier! You looked at the stats Cammy presented towards the beginning of the video, and you dismissed it at face fucking value and said, I don't trust this and neither should you, without actually looking at how the results were acquired! Fuck!
Tom, fuck's sake. He looked at statistics. The statistics said a lot of women were being harassed on the street. He concluded that street harassment is a problem. There is no metaphysical properties not being taken into account here. The conclusion of the studies is the bigger picture. You demand he gives evidence. When he gives evidence, you get angry at him because he doesn't come to the exact same conclusion as you. You don't actually care if this is really an issue, do you?
This is exactly like the gender wage gap issue. It exists, for sure, but not in the way feminists would have you believe.
What's being misinterpreted here then? Hey, you brought it up. Don't just stare at us. Actually finish your point, rather than leaving it in the air and hoping that nebulous crap slip past us as an actual rebuttal.
Harassment is almost like a gateway drug to other more serious forms of violence.
Wow. Slippery slope fallacy much?
Nate, if you're going to accuse someone of using a logical fallacy, it helps to know what the fallacy actually is.
Looking at women and calling them beautiful does not mean it'll lead to rape. That's like saying,
oh, if we allow gay marriage, it'll lead to marrying animals too.
Again, slippery slope fallacy, you committed it.
To clarify, a slippery slope fallacy is a special type of conditional argument that usually goes something like this.
Teaching us about the slippery slope fallacy is all well and good, mate, but you're implying that catcalling can lead to actual harassment when you have no evidence to support that. I don't care if you think that it's a plausible scenario. Nate pointed out the fallacy correctly.
No, if someone is willing to make unsolicited and sometimes creepy comments to random people on the street, they are obviously more likely to be a potential harasser. This is just basic logic. Slippery slope fallacies are usually delivered in the form of a non sequitur, such as claiming that because gay people are willing to be with other people of the same sex, they'll own fucking animals or whatever. And the fact that you obfuscated Cammy's explanation on how this fallacy works really just makes your argument look even more fishy than it already was.
Also, for the record, fallacy hunting makes you look like a complete arsehole in this situation, especially when you do it badly.
He only pointed out one fallacy. You pointed out more fallacies than he has, and they were all garbage. So who's really the one fallacy hunting, you fucking wanker?
Well, his main point was that Nate was doing it badly, but whatever. Also, no. The only fallacy I remember Cammy pointing out was Nate's use of the fallacy of relative privation, in which he was right.
I can just imagine a female friend of yours, if you have any, coming around to your house and saying, look, I've had a terrible day. I've been walking a long way in miserable weather, I've been harassed on the street, and I feel terrible and awful and degraded and humiliated, and I just need some emotional comfort and support. And then you being like, actually, sorry, you committed a logical fallacy there, ascribing human characteristics to non-human entities. Technically, the weather can't be miserable, so I'm afraid you'll have to come up with a better argument next time, okay? Bye-bye, and then slam the door.
Oh my God, this is the most blatant use of straw man I have ever seen.
No, this is not a straw man. He's just using this as an example of how Nate calling out a fallacy was inappropriate. He wasn't saying that Nate actually said that. In fact, you misrepresenting Cammy's argument makes you the only one here using a straw man. So go fucking ostrich or something.
You are trying so hard to demonize this person and crying that he's demonizing women when he has not shown that in the video at all.
Yeah, let's just ignore him misusing logical fallacies, sounding arrogant and aloof, ignoring or devaluing the actual point by focusing on minor shit like spelling errors, etc.
You fail at looking at opposing views with any form of maturity.
No fucking comment.
Or, if we're going to take the anti-feminist perspective of blaming the victim, as I'm sure you'd love me to do, perhaps in that situation it would be more appropriate to ask, if she doesn't like having the door slammed in her face, why would she seek emotional comfort from someone who clearly has no empathy for her situation? What kind of a reaction does she expect?
Just because someone is a victim doesn't mean we can't question them on anything and we should just take their word for it. Victim blaming is just a stupid buzzword.
I don't know if you ever watched my commentary on Mr. Flipper Invader's response to Lacey Green's video on victim blaming, but in that commentary, Flippy was trying to say that girls who dress in provocative clothes, took nude selfies, or even remotely acted how girls normally act, they deserve to get raped. And you want to know something that I pointed out constantly throughout my commentary on him? That he was victim blaming. And you want to know something else? He was blaming the victim for something that they, realistically speaking, should not have to take blame for since they didn't fucking ask to get raped. That's what victim blaming is. So even if it can be used as a buzzword, that doesn't mean you get to dismiss it every time it's brought up. And for you to completely ignore the fact that the term victim blaming does have some legitimacy just because some stupid twat sometimes uses it as a buzzword is complete fucking horseshit.
I'm gonna take this a step further. Here's a clip from a YouTuber named Kevin Logan that pretty much blows this victim blaming isn't real garbage out of the water completely. Link in the description.
The only way that I can think that you've come to the conclusion that the accusation of victim blaming is fallacious is if you think that victim blaming doesn't happen. And that's obviously not fucking true. As you can tell from this very, very quickly assembled selection of tweets from a very, very quick Google search that I did about victim blaming. And all of that was put together in about 5 fucking minutes, that little compilation, just from a very quick Google search of just shit from Twitter. And it was the fucking, like, the first page or two of images. Okay, that's just from Twitter, just from that very quick Google search of shit just from Twitter. Let alone the fact that you've got major politicians saying fucking horrific victim blaming shit, and people in the media saying it, and pricks like you on the internet fucking saying it. So yes, victim blaming very much happens. So in what possible fucking world is it fallacious to accuse someone of victim blaming if they've actually done victim blaming, which we've just seen many examples of people fucking doing? You fucking dishonest little sphincter.
I would call you out on virtue signaling, but that's also a buzzword.
Says that calling him out on virtue signaling would be in of itself a buzzword. Feels compelled enough to use said buzzword. Anyway, fucking blow me. Also, am I the only one who hates how deliberately worded this was? Like, the wording feels like Tom knows his point is wrong somehow, but tries to go for the I could have said it, but didn't really say it tactic. It's such a cheap weasel-ass tactic to use in debates in an effort to not have to get called up for being wrong when you actually are proven wrong, when the person making the argument knows they might actually be wrong.
And this really isn't directed at Tom, but I want to point this out in case some pisslicker in the comments thinks they got us on this one. Virtue signaling is actually much more of a buzzword than victim blaming, since even if someone genuinely is saying something just to seem more virtuous, that doesn't actually refute their argument whatsoever. Just thought I'd point that out.
So now, after this, we move on to...
I was assaulted last year on the metro coming back from work. I got on the metro, and just as the doors were closing, a man came up behind me and shoved me into the car.
For some reason, Nate has decided to delete some of what she was saying, so I'll play that for you.
And the doors closed behind him, so now I was stuck in the car, couldn't move, I couldn't really turn, I couldn't see anybody.
Nate, could you please explain why you deleted that part?
And slowly, I started to feel something touching me.
Okay. What?
And that, my friends, is what we call an empathy fail. And by the way, you cut off an important detail, so here it is, just to clarify.
And slowly, I started to feel something touching me from behind. I could still feel the pressure more and more building and pushing into behind me. And I knew what it was. I just didn't want to admit I knew what it was. And at one point, I just started to panic, and I turned my body a little bit, and I could see that he had his hand in his pants.
I'm wondering if you leave this stuff out, because if it plays for too long, people will start to take it seriously.
This is the only point I kind of agree with. I believe the reason Nate cut this part out a little bit because what he had summed up the clip correctly. She was pushed into a subway train and felt something behind her that made her uncomfortable. Nate made it out like she was groped, but instead she felt something and turned to see that the guy had a hand in his pants. First of all, ew, don't do that in public, man. Second, leaving those parts out do make it contextually misleading.
Tom, important question. What the fuck does you agreeing with Cammy's point here actually add to your commentary? Like, Cammy already put the context back in the video and pointed out how it was cut from Nate's original video and how contextually misleading it was. It's not like there's any information that Cammy forgot to bring up that you needed to bring up yourself for Cammy's point to make sense. So really, at the end of the day, why did you feel this needed to be in your commentary?
How do you transition from people looking at you and calling you beautiful to groping on a subway?
I refer you to the answer I gave earlier.
I mean, yeah, groping is unacceptable, but comparing that with people looking at you is ridiculous.
I refer you to the answer I gave earlier.
You don't have to refer back to anything. If you already made a point about something, then saying stuff like this is a waste of time. Just skip the content if you're going to repeat yourself.
Oh, you mean like you essentially repeating the same fucking argument Cammy made right after he got done making the argument at hand?
He was just pointing out the things he said apply to other parts of the video as well. He's also showing the context for the point we cut right back to, since if he didn't, it'd come off as awkward. And his interjections were really short anyway, so does it really matter in the end?
Okay, let's recap. According to this video, catcalling is when people look at you or call you things like gorgeous and beautiful.
I love the fact that you specify those particular terms, as if to say, oh god, these people doing the catcalling are obviously being so nice, but these women don't accept it as a compliment. How dare they? You're a piece of shit, Nate.
Women don't have to accept any comments that are given to them, but expecting not to get them is as unreasonable as someone expecting not to get a reply on a comment you posted on the internet.
Yeah, no, that is a shitty-ass analogy, since making a comment on the internet means you actively started the engagement in the first place. That's completely incomparable to just walking down the street and receiving unsolicited comments about your appearance.
And you saying that people should be restricted on making comments in public makes you the piece of shit.
Well, if that's the case, I've been catcalled. A few times each week, I'll go outside for a jog, and on several occasions, girls have stared at me or said I look good. I remember on one occasion a girl yelled, "Woo!" as I went by.
Woo isn't even a comment, really. In fact, it's really vague, and for all you know, it might have not even been directed at you.
Am I gonna cuss her out, though?
Go to hell.
No. I'll take the compliment and continue my day.
Perhaps the reason why you might not be bothered by such an experience is that it did not occur within a broader climate of sexual violence against men. As a guy, you are statistically far less likely to be a victim of sexual violence than a woman.
I'm sorry, what was it that you said in the beginning of the video?
Just because A is more oppressed than B, that doesn't mean that B is not oppressed. That's an invalid inference.
And now you're saying that just because he's a man, he doesn't have to worry about being sexually violated? Men are statistically almost as likely to be victims of sexual assault as women. Ever heard of prison rape?
Okay, most of this is valid, but it's kind of a stretch to count prison as part of society since it's completely cut off from the rest of it. I'm not saying it's not an issue, just that it's not exactly a societal issue. But yes, you made an actually valid point in this commentary, thank God. I know it'll probably be the only one, but it's at least refreshing.
I'm not trying to scare anyone that sexual violence is rampant, because it's not. The rate of sexual violence in America was reduced to half the amount than it was 20 years ago. There is no rape culture, as some people would like to have you believe. If you want to see a real rape culture, look no further than the Middle East.
But just because A is more oppressed than B does not mean B is more oppressed. You just made this argument. Welcome back, Tom.
The bottom line is sexual violence is bad no matter who the victim is, and that we shouldn't downplay any potential victims of such violence, even for Nate or Cam.
I call you out on virtue signaling, but that's a buzzword. Yeah, cry on your fucking Cheerios, bitch.
1 in 5 women will have experienced some form of sexual violence since the age of 16. Almost everyone will know a close friend or a family member who's been through this. Try to imagine what it would be like if you were a victim of some form of sexual violence and you were traumatized by such an awful experience. And, you go to the shops one day, you're minding your own business, you don't want any trouble at all, and then just in the background and in your peripheral vision, you begin to hear guys making comments about your body. Now, in that situation, how would you feel? Unsafe? Humiliated and degraded, especially knowing that these people, these total strangers, could have left you alone with absolutely no cost to themselves whatsoever.
Let me just say that for the record that I have been sexually harassed. I've had guys slap my ass out of the blue before and I felt really embarrassed. So I can see how bad it can feel for other people. But personal anecdotes aside, the men that you use in this thought experiment are simply commentating on her.
They're just commentating, guys. It's just a commentary.
It's just a prank, bro.
While people talking about you behind your back can be a real bitch, as long as they're not making any physical offenses towards you, then you shouldn't feel afraid. If you really do fear about your safety, then just stay as far away from them as possible, or just leave.
Okay, here's my problem with this point. You're essentially assuming that this will work for every and any scenario involving this issue. What if the people making these comments work there and the victim has to go there every day because they work there as well and they can't risk losing said job? Or, even better, what if the people doing this shit actively seek the victim out regardless of their efforts to avoid them? What do they do then, Tom? Alright, take it from now. The issue here is that this is such an easy and circumstantial solution, and it doesn't actually require you to think about other possibilities that would make this tactic ineffective and useless.
Now imagine that happening on a regular basis throughout your daily routine so that you hear these comments again and again and again, bringing up all of these horrible feelings. Now, that's not a good thing. That's not flattering, that's a fucking nightmare.
I agree. If it does come to that point where the same people are making the comments that are making you uncomfortable on a daily basis, then you should probably go up to them and ask them nicely to stop. If they don't, then get help. The thing about people that are traumatized is you're supposed to help them overcome their trauma, not make society accommodate to their trauma.
Don't make society accommodate to the trauma of rape or harassment victims by, making it illegal or whatever, you fucking fascist.
Your idea that people should just lighten up, accept the compliment, and move on isn't a solution at all. It's just not that simple, and it certainly doesn't come from a train of thought that emphasizes mutual aid and solidarity with the people who are really suffering from this. Why? Because you don't care. It's fucking obvious that you don't care. What you care about is lots of views and lots of likes. Principles? Solidarity with oppressed people? Nah.
False dichotomy number 2. He either cares about women or he cares about views and likes.
No. His point was that he already established that Nate doesn't care about women, so he came to the conclusion that he probably just cares about views, since why else would he make this? It's not a false dichotomy, that's deductive reasoning.
It can't possibly be both. Also, yes, the solution is simple because not everyone in society is going to care about the feelings of other people. There are always going to be assholes in the world. Instead of trying to police every single person's spontaneous comments on women, we can help women not feel so weak and fragile instead of treating them like they can't take care of themselves. Occam's razor saves the day.
Okay, so you acknowledge that there are assholes who pull this type of crap, yet you're not willing to come up with a real solution to solve the issue other than accept the comment and move on because it would be considered policing everyone's comments. friends. Tom, did you stop to think that maybe by ignoring unsolicited comments like that, you're actually enabling these people to continue pulling this type of crap? And by making the type of arguments you just got done making, you're actually proving Cammy right about how you don't care about the issue at hand, and you're just coming up with easy, unrealistic solutions just so you can have an easier time not having to worry about people bringing this issue to your attention.
To conclude this video, here's a short clip from YouTuber Tara Babcock.
So going back to commenting on someone's appearance, there's two types of ways that you can do it. In an objectifying way and in an admiring way. Here are some examples. You are so beautiful. Obviously just admiration, right? Thank God you have nice tits or you would have no subs. That's obviously objectification, insinuating that there's nothing more to a person than their looks. Damn girl, nice titties! This one's up to interpretation, but I believe that if the person is serious and not sarcastic, he's just trying to say you have very nice breasts. Lighten up! And you gotta always understand that people are gonna see your appearance first, no matter who you are or what you're doing. People have eyes, not into your soul.
Okay, I'm not going to spend too long deconstructing what she said here, because the basic idea of what you've done here is so outrageously offensive. First of all, Tara Babcock is a professional model. She shows her appearance off for a living. That clip was not about catcalling. It was a clip of her talking about how she doesn't mind receiving comments about her appearance on her YouTube videos. Personally, I don't think that you can draw a parallel between comments on a YouTube video about a professional model and comments in the street about your average woman. These are two completely different scenarios. If you make a YouTube video, you're presenting content to the public for feedback. If you're walking down the street, you are not making a public presentation for feedback.
But what the internet and the real world have in common is that they're both public spaces, where people are free to speak indiscriminately to anybody. And while Tara Babcock's video isn't directly about catcalling, it's still about how she handles comments about her appearances.
Yeah, as a professional model. Has the light bulb really still not gone off in your head yet?
She gets an unquantifiable amount of comments about her appearance 24/7.
She chooses to, and most women don't. Do I have to fucking spell this out for you?
Yet the women in this street harassment video can't even handle some. I think they can learn a thing or two from her.
No, because most women don't choose to put themselves out for comments, so they shouldn't have to act like they do if they don't want to.
And we would also have to introduce another element into this wonderful discussion, because I know where you got that clip now. Tara's full video is titled RTV number 14, Feel Free to Fap, in which, after the comments that you included, she went on to explain that she was flattered by people fapping to her YouTube videos.
So people always ask, how do you feel about tons of guys jacking off to you? My first reaction is, they are? Cool. It's pretty fucking flattering that I can get that kind of rise out of people.
So if we accept the idea that comments on YouTube and comments in the street are easily comparable situations, which we have to if this clip that you've included is to fulfill its desired purpose, then I have to ask now, how do you feel about women being the target of public masturbation? After all, 37% of 811 female respondents in a 2008 online survey said that they were. Should they feel flattered by that? Should the women on the subway take being masturbated at as a compliment?
Oh boy, I can't wait to see how he bullshits his way up this mountain.
No, because public masturbation, unlike catcalling, is against the law. I'm not arguing that everything regarding the internet should be applicable to real life. Just the fact that these are both public spheres where everyone is free to comment on anything they want.
Dude, that wasn't his point. His point was that because this video was about people masturbating to Tara Babcock, it's a horrible fucking example for random ordinary women. Of course he knows it's illegal. That wasn't what he was getting at, though.
Nate, can I just ask, what is the thought process behind this? What made you think, oh, I know what will be an appropriate response to these traumatized women talking about being sexually assaulted in public? How about this clip from a video that this professional model made about how she's flattered by people fapping to her YouTube videos? That is a good thing to do. What made you think that? Seriously, Nate, what the fuck is wrong with you? You have considerably more subscribers than I do. You have the opportunity to inspire people to get out there and join social movements that are trying to make the world a better place. But no, this fucking shit video is your contribution to the world. This is what you've given humanity. It's 5 minutes of you frantically grasping at straws, whining, and making superficial shit arguments because you seem to be frightened by the notion that women can come together and organise to improve their lives and get the respect that they deserve.
Respect is earned, not just given to people on a silver platter.
What in the actual hell? Respect is earned? As in, The respect of being treated like a human being? Yeah, no, we're not a bunch of goddamn barbarians. There are some basic levels of respect that people deserve. People get basic rights as human fucking beings. This is total horseshit that I guarantee you didn't think about for more than a second, or at least I hope you didn't. You should be ashamed of this crap.
And what the hell have you contributed to YouTube, Cammy? A bunch of anti-capitalism propaganda and pro-anarcho-communism propaganda. You must feel so proud of yourself, comrade.
He has different socio-political views compared to mine, therefore he contributes nothing to society. Ew, pinko commie, get away, red scare.
Considering the large amount of videos you have that are commentary worthy, I may have to come back to you again for round 2. I try not to do the same person twice, but it may come to that. Don't make me come back for you, Cammy. And that's it for this commentary. Don't worry, the next video or commentary for that matter won't take as long. This is SuperFunnyBros, and I'll end the video with a list of all the GoFundMe contributors. See you soon.
Hey Oki, how does it feel to know that a third of your money was stolen? Hey Ryan, how does it feel to know that all $5 of your donation was stolen?
God damn, Tom. When I first glossed over this video when it came out, I had no idea I'd be here on the ass end of a huge commentary on you and ready to call it the worst commentary to be released this year. 2016, the year of the fucking sloth. How did you beat that? It's honestly really sad when the closest point of comparison I can think of with your video is Flippy's commentary on Lacey Green of all things. Like, you imply and even outright say some pretty deplorable shit here and act like it's nothing. Even if you may not have entirely meant it that way, it's still very much what you said and implied. I'm honestly struggling to come up with something to even suggest to you to fix this. If I were in your situation, I wouldn't touch politics with a 10-foot pole again for a long-ass time, because you clearly aren't good at it.
Tom, I know you're aware of this, but if it wasn't for your commentaries, I wouldn't have gotten into the commentary community. You're the reason why I was inspired to start making commentaries when I had virtually nothing else going on for me in the realm of YouTube. Hell, you along with Youngblood and TOG Professor were my main inspiration for this persona I've created for my commentaries. But most importantly, I wouldn't have gone the places I've gone in the community as quickly as I did had it not been for you not only recommending me to others in the CC in your 2013 Q&A to be on the lookout for my future commentaries, but by also getting me to create my Skype account and in turn introducing me to people like Hobbs, Mr. Sir Raven, and Scarlet Otaku. And nothing is going to take any of that away from you just because you made a bad video. And that's why it pains me so much more to say that this is not only your worst commentary by far, not only is this one of the most surprisingly terrible commentaries I've seen from an otherwise competent commentator, this is honestly the worst commentary of 2016. Say what you will about Slothboy's commentary on Roosh V or his involvement in the SOCCOM on Roaring Thunder Pursuit, but at least with those videos, those are the type of content I expect from Sloth to make. I do not and should not expect that type of video from you of all people. I've been watching your commentaries since you inspired me to join the community in 2013. I know you're better than this. I know you're smarter than this. I know you're fully capable of avoiding mistakes like the ones you made in this commentary. After all, you've been in the community since 2011. You should fucking know better than the rest of the people in the CC not to pull blatantly biased horseshit like what you did here. That's why this is hands down worse than either the videos Sloth made, and without question, without doubt, the worst commentary of 2016. Congratulations! You kept Sloth from taking the top spot for worst commentary of 2016 like he should have and would have done had you not made this video. Good fucking job! But even with all that in mind, I still respect you as a person, which is why I'm going to do for you what you would do for me if this was you commentating on me. I'm going to tell you how you can improve. I'm not sure if you've seen the post I've made on Ask.fm, but I made a post on that website back in 2015 that pretty much gives advice to commentators who just joined the CC on how to tackle commentaries. So let me read off 3 items I've listed off in this post since this does unfortunately apply to your video. Thoroughly analyze the video you're commentating on. Back your points up with logic and evidence and present said evidence in your video, or at the very least, the description. Be as open-minded as possible with the video you're commentating on and give said video the benefit of the doubt. That way, you'll find legitimate problems with the video you're commentating on since you weren't going in trying to find problems. Either that, or you may come to the conclusion that said video is not worth commentating on. Don't go in trying to find as many problems as possible, because you'll find problems with it, but chances are a lot, if not most of the problems you'll find, will turn out to be really bad nitpicks. Notice how these are all things Ski and myself were consistently pointing out throughout the entire video. You obviously did not thoroughly analyze the video, because if you did, you would not have made points that were either irrelevant to the topic at hand and or points that proved virtually nothing wrong about Cammy's video. You obviously didn't back most of your arguments up with evidence when they so desperately needed them, or even bother to provide them in the description below. The description speaks for itself. You obviously didn't go into this video open-minded, otherwise you wouldn't have dismissed virtually every single one of Cammy's evidence, as well as the documentary, just so you could pull this facade that you're an anti-feminist that no-scoped the bad boogeyman monster of a movement known as third-wave feminism, when the reality is that you're trying so hard and failing so miserably to disprove a video where 95% of the information provided were not wrong to begin with. The fact that I had to go over all these advices that were intended to keep up-and-coming commentators from making fucking amateur mistakes and telling someone who has been in the CC for 5 years now that this is something to keep in mind for future commentaries is really fucking sad, and you should fucking know better than to pull this type of crap. I know this went on for so long, and I apologize for that, but I'm sorry. As someone who was inspired by Tom, actually looked up to him for a really long time, and actually got me as big in the CC as I am now, this was an incredibly disheartening video to watch, and I'm hoping Tom never makes a video like this ever again.
That's why I'm not backing down on anything I said or how harsh I was. I mean, you've been doing this shit for how long? You're way out of kid gloves territory at this point. If you want to make a commentary on us, go ahead. Maybe all the vaguely racist and sexist things you said in this video were actually sage wisdom from the gods and we just didn't see it. Probably not, but hey, wouldn't hurt to beat your own record, and I'm a glutton for some good-ass material. I'm not gonna lie and say even with how obnoxious the points made in this video were, I didn't get any enjoyment out of this. I just hope you also get something out of it, whatever that might be. Now we can finally give the fedora a Viking funeral and be done with this.
Are there gonna be any drinks?
How else are we gonna light the bonfire, though?
Touché.
Okay, but seriously, this fire is getting out of hand. It's probably gonna destroy everything here. Like, we should probably call the fire department or something. This is really serious.